Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on this Friday afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin Graham and also young James French dialing in from Ireland. It's always an absolute pleasure to see you guys. It's a massive weekend. Kev, before we get stuck into it, I do believe we were in the same room again last weekend, and yet our paths did not cross. Would I be right in saying that you were at Barras to see Mogwai?
No, something came up and I never made the gig.
Oh, you missed another
So,
belter, another
yes,
cracker of a
yes.
gig. Every gig seems like an event when it's Mogwai. It's not just another, ticket off your list. You come away with it. Well, you come away with it with your ears buzzing, that's for sure. But it always feels like an event, Kev.
It does, especially at the Barrowlands. I think Glasgow bands playing the Barrowlands has got a special significance and they build it up quite big. And you get to a point where sometimes you do get to a point though where you've seen bands so many times and that legendary venue and they blew the roof off it that many times. You go, do I really need to go again? No, like you do get to that wee bit of a point, eh? So. Aye, I'm glad it was good. My cousin says it was good, but things got away from me last week, so I couldn't make it.
Oh, well, it was tremendous. And I've lost count genuinely because my brother and I were talking about it on the way home, Kev, and there was a few he remembered that I didn't and vice versa. So we have seen him a lot, but I'll be going back the next time, the next album. Big shout out to everybody who managed to get their name down for a seat at the Acsom Cup Final fan zone. It's at Barras Art and Design. At the award-winning Barras Art and Design, can I just say? And there's going to be like 430 of you in that fan zone, watching the game on the big screen, unable to get a ticket, live music from David McKendrick. The Acsom team will be in situ. And of course, the most important bit, Kev, free pies. Free pies on the day, half time. There we go. Looking forward to that. Come and say hello. And it's great to have James. James, I'm going to start off with a few players that I think you filled us in with some background information on all three of these guys. And all three of them will feature in some way or other in the cup final tomorrow. And it's Idah, of course, Liam Scales, and the much written off Johnny Kenny. And I want to start off with Johnny Kenny. Isn't it incredible that we're sitting here and he's a guy that will have absolutely no issue with if he starts on the bench. And in fact, with 10 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, if you need a goal, he's going to be the guy you're bringing on. I mean, what a turnaround for the young man.
Yeah, I've been watching Johnny and following Johnny since kind of last season with Rovers, then kind of into the Conference League down Rovers, and they obviously done really, really well. And he kind of really displayed his ability to kind of bring go up a level, almost even in the Conference League. Like, I think his league form was kind of probably worse than his Conference League form, which is funny considering he's kind of gone up a few levels. I think in particular in that campaign he really showcased, obviously he does have elite speed, but like his finishing as well kind of has really improved over the last year or two. Like, even Rodgers kind of name checked him after the last couple of press conferences when asked about him, that his finishing is really kind of quality at the minute. I remember I was covering a couple of Rovers games last year, and I remember asking their manager Stephen Bradley like what's kind of resulted in Johnny Kenny and his finishing just becoming absolutely unbelievable. And he was just saying that statistically wise, like the previous season, like he should have been scoring a lot more than he was at the rate he was scoring. And I think obviously now coming back from Rovers to Celtic, he's obviously on a real high point. And myself, I probably had doubts that he could I think he's probably good enough to play in Scotland, but in terms of playing for Celtic, it's a different proposition. And I probably had doubts myself that he'd be able to kind of rise to that, because playing for Celtic is obviously mentally very difficult, along with kind of playing in the team. But I think obviously his performance against Aberdeen, even his cameo off the bench against St Mirren, kind of really showcased that he has the quality to play for Celtic. And if he does come off the bench in Aberdeen, I'll be confident that he can contribute.
You know, it's one of the ones where he comes over and you're hoping for the best, Kev, when he comes over from Sligo Rovers, and you're thinking, brilliant, what an opportunity for this young man to come over and become a Celtic player, the stuff he dreams. And then we hear, speaking through people involved in the game, that it was homesickness that resulted in him leaving to go back to Ireland. That was after an unsuccessful loan spell at Queen's Park, of course. But he gets the confidence back, Kev, to the point where when he's come back, he must have shown Brendan Rodgers a proper approach, like a really good attitude to break back into the squad, because Rodgers can be ruthless. in that respect. You just have to look at Gustav Lagerbielke, for example, a player we spent a lot of money on, who I don't think did a great deal wrong, yet he's made his mind up and away you go. Johnny Kenny's come back in and actually got right back into Brendan's plans. And listen, I'm not about to call it the Johnny Kenny final, but if he comes on and scores a winner, clip this right now, because we've started the conversation off with Johnny. It's brilliant, Kev, because you sometimes take it for granted that he's only 21, he's away from home, yet he seems to finally have settled at Celtic.
He does. James, did you say that he has to go elite level speed? Did you say that, or he has got elite level speed? Sorry.
No, I was saying he does have elite level speed. It's probably one of his main traits, along with his finishing.
That's one of the things that I noticed when I saw him in the flesh, that he was far quicker than what I actually expected. I also like the fact that he's brave and he's not afraid to actually give a wee centre half a wee push now and again and try and use his physicality to knock centre halves off the ball. His running header for his goal against Aberdeen was fantastic. He probably needs to go on loan again next season, right enough. He is a victim of circumstance, the way of selling Kyogo and unable to get a third choice striker to come in. Now, I think he's took, in the last couple of weeks anyway, he's took his chance. Before that, he wasn't really round about the squad, but in the last couple of weeks, he's took his chance. It'll be interesting to see, because if Rodgers starts with Idah through the middle, which means Big Adam's on the bench, then Kenny might not actually get on the bench. But if Adam starts up front and Idah starts on the wing, then Kenny's likely to get on the bench. So it'll be interesting to see what the starting lineup actually is for him. But fair play to the fella. I'm sure the club have probably got a plan for him over the close season. It's a plan that they've maybe already discussed with him. But I could actually see him actually going out on loan. I don't know if I'll probably think they will send him out on loan again, because it looks like the loan moves have done him good.
What do you think? What kind of loan, Kev? Because we've seen different types. We've seen like Home going over to America. We've got Kwon closer to home at Hibs. You've got the young kids over at Admira Wacker. And of course, Johnny enjoyed that time over in Ireland himself. I think it needs to be a different test than Irish football. No disrespect, but we know he can do it there. Where do you think he should go out on loan to challenge him so he can step up a bit?
I would be looking at the English Championship or send them to Austria. And look, when you look at these young lads and they can go to the English Championship and maybe get lost in that's a tough league down there, and it's a tough physical league. And even if the guys come back up and they go, well, he didn't really do too well in that loan spell. No, he's went there to learn something. And if he's went down there and he's no playing and there's certain things didn't work out for him, that's a learning experience. It doesn't mean that he's going to come back to Celtic a worse player because he hasn't managed to get a game, for example, for Birmingham. He's learned a lesson down there. He's played in a tough league. He's came on in a tough league. And that's the learning curve that you want the guy that he wasn't going to get at Celtic that season. So I would like to see him going maybe down there the English Championship or something like that and see. I think he's got the pace to actually do it down in England, because that's one of the main things that you look for in a centre forward, and it's one of the main things that I've banged on about this for a couple of times. The times I've seen Daniel Cummins, fantastic finisher, but he hasn't got the pace of Johnny Kenny. And
well, that was
a big noticeable thing for me.
You did mention that at the time, Kevin. We know that Brendan likes pace up top. I always go back to the Callum McGregor loan, and Callum's spoken about it himself. He goes to League One, Kev, and he might have disappeared. He might have disappeared from view. He went to League One. He went to Notts County. Yet he actually became one of the kind of star men. We all know now the pictures of him and Jack Grealish. Well, Grealish never got a game in the FA Cup final. I'm pretty sure Callum McGregor will get a game in the Scottish FA Cup final. But these kind of loan deals have to be embraced by the player. And even if it's maybe even an unfashionable side. I think if I was a young player, though, James, looking at the options available to you, I'd be battering the door down to go to Austria and actually learn a new culture and a new way of life. And they will send you over with another player. If you're going to Admira Wacker, they won't just send you over in isolation. I think as a young guy, that would be tremendous for him to go over there and just learn a new culture. The thing with that, though, I'm not quite sure of the level, the standard that they're playing it, because they're not in the top league, are they?
Yeah, it's the second tier, and like just to kind of look at Johnny's development over the last year, like he's obviously had the really good year. Rovers finished it really well, scored like numerous goals in the Conference League, big goals away to Rapid Vienna. I think he scored in almost every Conference League game for Rovers other than the Chelsea game. And I think coming back to Celtic, he's obviously learning this elite environment, learning off the likes of Idah up front over the next few months. And then in the summer, obviously you're saying I hope he gets a loan, and I think it's not necessarily about whatever country we send him to. It's just about sending him to the right club where like they will put trust in him, and they will give him a lot of opportunities. Like, because if you send him out to Scotland, there's always that kind of fear that, say, if you send him to like a Kilmarnock or a St. Johnstone, and the kind of mad nature of Scottish football, like if one of them finds themselves in relegation trouble, they could very easily drop him. They could very easily stop playing him. Do you know what I mean? It's just the nature of Scottish football and kind of the reluctance to kind of give these young guys a chance. So personally, I think a League One move probably would be best. I think that's probably kind of where his level is at the minute. Lower Championship, kind of high League One, and kind of guarantee that he's going to be playing football. At the same time, with your reference to Austria, I think like looking at young Irish players, they always kind of fall into the trap of going into the English League One Championship, and a lot of guys get lost there, end up coming back or going elsewhere. And I think for Johnny, I think he could really thrive in kind of more of a foreign league, like the likes of France, Belgium, more development leagues, Netherlands even. We've seen Troy Parrott this season, how well he's doing for AZ Alkmaar, a young Irish striker. And I think I'd say there was numerous clubs watching him during the Conference League. Like I said, there was a lot of scouts watching him. He scored 4 or 5 goals against decent level opposition. Like I'm sure he has admirers kind of on the continent, and I think that'd be a move that I really like to see him take, kind of learn more on that kind of tactical side of the game. Like that's what Troy Parrott said a lot in his interviews over in Holland, that it's maybe a bit slower pace in the Championship, but it's tactically it's a level up. And I think if he can go to Netherlands or France, really improve his game, but also improve the tactical side of his game, come back to Celtic, I think he'll be in a much stronger position, whether he stays in at Celtic or he gets another move.
Yeah, that's a football intelligence, absolutely. And, who knows who's going to be the hero tomorrow? Hopefully they're wearing green and white hoops, that's for sure. What do you think in the comment section? What happens to Johnny Kenny after the Scottish Cup final? How do we develop that player before bringing him back to the football club? James Kerwin, let's hope a great win on Saturday and more medals for Greg Taylor makes him stop and reconsider his contract. We love him to stay. His experience, devotion to the club is overwhelming. You've taken us onto the subject of Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor is one of a handful of players who may well be playing their last games for Celtic, Kev. And again, Brendan Rodgers spoke about Greg Taylor yesterday. And in a few of the interviews, he's mentioned the fact that if you're going to stay here, you will get game time, even though Kieran Tierney's coming back. I mean, we've been focusing on Greg Taylor wants this amount of money, the club are only prepared to give him that. It might not be as black and white as that. It might not just be down to the financials. Greg might be looking at it and saying, why would I stay here when I'm not going to get a game? That's a few times Brendan's mentioned that now. But he does say that it's not a done deal. He's definitely not leaving the football club at this moment in time.
It's almost as if he's trying to wish it into existence, that he's putting it out there that there's maybe a game time issue with Kieran coming back. And he's saying it out in public that you are going to get games. There's certain type of games where you're going to play. Also, as well, it doesn't matter. Greg Taylor knows the football club. He's a winner. He's one of the main sort of wee characters in the dressing room. And I don't think Rodgers really wants to lose that. I found it interesting that Rodgers saying it's not 100% that he's going to leave. It's maybe shown there's a bit of doubts on both sides. What's actually going to happen here? Look, it could be his last game tomorrow, and if he walks away with a winner's medal, even if he doesn't walk away with a winner's medal, he's been part of one of the most domestically successful Celtic sides in our history, and that he's always going to be part of that successful side. So he'll go away with my blessing. If he stays, then fair play. He's there to actually contribute going forward. I understand both sides of the argument here. I do understand both sides of the argument, where folks says we can upgrade. Well, we can argue that we have upgraded with Kieran Tierney coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can also argue that is there the same drop off going for KT to Greg Taylor, and there is another side going for Alistair Johnson to Anthony Ralston. I would probably say there's a less of a drop off bringing in Greg Taylor, just the way that we play. But then also get people going, well, he's been there, he's done his gig, it's maybe time for him to move on and we can do better. I understand both sides of the argument there. But we're not the guys in the room making the decision. And the decision that the manager wants to make is the manager wants him to stay. And we can't really argue with that. We can talk about it until we're grey in the face here. It's not going to make any difference that the manager wants him to stay. And if a deal can get done, then I'm sure the manager wants that deal done. And it doesn't matter our opinions on Greg Taylor whatsoever. It's, as you say, it's an improvement. I think it's an improvement in the squad. You've got Greg Taylor as your first choice left back at the moment, and you're replacing him with a better player. Mm-hmm. Then the player that's the first choice is now in the squad, and you can rely on that player at a certain level domestically. Yes, he's going to have a couple of bad games. Every player has a bad game. That's what goes without saying. So if you bring in KT and keep Taylor, you have improved the squad.
I agree, because where we are now, Kev, it's Taylor with Schlupp backing him up, and Schlupp, his form's disappeared. Replacing that with KT with Greg Taylor's backup for me, it's a vast improvement on where we are now. Left back's been an interesting situation this season, James, because obviously we brought in the youngster from Barcelona, Alex Bailly. I wasn't convinced, but he was
done well in Italy.
He's
done well in Italy,
and he's going to get a big move by the looks of him. I think that he was taking time to adapt, but that's understandable. And before you got to the point of even making a judgment on the guy, he was away. And it felt as though he was away because Celtic were confident that we were going to get our left back in January. So we agreed that Bailly would be going. We never dug our heels in, etc., etc. I don't think we did get our left back. And then obviously it's always felt as though Schlupp was a kind of backup choice. He was on the list, but he wasn't a first choice. I don't think he'll be at the football club next year. Will Greg Taylor, in your opinion, James?
I was kind of interested in Rodgers' comments, kind of saying that Taylor hasn't left yet. Like if you're into kind of reading the cryptic messaging from Instagram and seeing like Greg seeming like that he's leaving the club, like you'd probably have the opposite opinion. But touching on Valley, like I actually really liked Valley when he was here. I thought he'd done the basics really well, and I was kind of even hoping we could get him long term just because of his age and being able to kind of back up whoever was in front of him. But he's obviously doing well at Como, as Kev said. But in terms of Taylor, it's ideally you have him and Tierney next season together, and they've probably our strongest kind of left back options in years, like in terms of quality. But do I think he'll be here? Probably not, because I think it's not really a question of money, and obviously it's a question of playtime. But even if you look at the number of years Greg's been here, what he's achieved, he's obviously just had his child as well. I think he's looking for his next big move in terms of, if you look at his age, he's looking for that next, his last big contract really is in the prime years of his career. And I think he's kind of looking for that next move and that to kind of set him up for life. And that's fair enough. If you look at his circumstances and stuff, he's gave everything for Celtic. He's been a really, really underrated player, and he's won it all. And I think the way he's looking at it, I think he's probably looking at it, it's the right time to move on. Kieran's obviously coming back, and Greg will want to kind of get that last squeeze every bit of life out of him and get kind of that last big contract. And whether that's abroad, where he goes to Dynamo Zagreb, where the links have been, or he goes to America, it remains to be seen. But I'd imagine he'll be looking at kind of other options going into the summer, and we kind of wish him the best because he's been a brilliant servant at Celtic, and I think he's been a really, really underrated, to be honest, by a lot of the support.
I think there's two things here, Paul and James. I think there's two things. You had that bizarre 3 or 4 days when Michael Stewart and Chris Boyd floated the idea that Rangers should come in for him, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'd almost forgotten about that.
I still think that was a fishing exercise to put it out there that Greg Taylor wanted to stay in Scotland.
Right.
I do think that was a fishing exercise. Be his agent or whoever represents him saying, go and put this out there, because the guy really does want to stay in Scotland to try and make Celtic act. The second point I would want to bring up, if Greg Taylor does leave, we're not spending big money on a backup to KT, so it'll be another young guy on loan from probably an elite club somewhere, an elite academy somewhere, like your Alex Vai or somebody like that. We're not spending money. So the way I would look at it, that I would rather Greg Taylor stayed in the squad as KT's backup, to instead of bringing in another young guy who might not adapt to the Scottish game. Mind you, I think we didn't see enough of him, because basically, I think we were basically told KT was arriving in January, and Arteta changed his mind. And before we knew it, we had our left back out the door, and the left back we wanted in wasn't in. And we made a mess of that, but I'm blaming Mikel Arteta for that. And I'm actually quite glad he won nothing, and he's got a strange heat and a strange Weetabix looking haircut. A
strange heat. Imagine no liking him because he's got a strange heat. He's got a magnificent head of hair, Kev.
The excuses he's came up with in the last couple of weeks are Clement level.
I know.
Really are Clement level. And he didn't deserve Kieran Tierney.
Well, you've been speaking to your pal who obviously runs the Arse blog, and he was of the view that if more players had the application and that will to win as Kieran Tierney has, then, the club would have done so much better. And that's something, though, Kev, that I think, it's indoctrinated in a young player at Celtic coming through the ranks, whereby at other clubs, it is acceptable sometimes not to win a game. At Celtic, it's not. It's absolutely, it's disastrous if you don't win a game. So Kieran Tierney's got that winning mentality that we were talking about yesterday, and we're bringing him right back into the squad. But I agree with you. There's no way we're spending big money on a backup at left back. And I don't think it's all. We may as well take in Greg Taylor. You've also got to look at the fact this is his 6th season at the football club. Regardless of his nationality, what he has got is he knows the standards of Celtic. He's not just passing through, Kev. He's got that, like, I think, what was Lustig, 7 years at the club? You look at Tommy Rogic, 9 years, near Beaton, 8 or 9 years. These guys know the standards of the football club, and it's important to have a collection of them, even though they haven't come through the ranks. And Brendan Rodgers has touched on that as well. So I think I'm in agreement. I hope it's not his last game, and I'm pretty sure we all agree he starts at left back as well. Johnny Kenny, for me, starts on the bench, but it does move us on to the other centre forward that I want to speak to you about, James, and that's Adam Idah. I'm a fan. I understand that he's not electric every single time you see him. People go on about his consistency, maybe the fact that he's better as an impact sub, etc., etc. But lo and behold, he has scored 20 goals this season. And over the piece, for someone who's been the second choice for a large part of the season, I think that's great. And he's still got another game to write his name into Celtic folklore. James, what's your view been on the kind of reaction to Adam Idah? I'm not sure if you're frozen there, mate, or if you're just thinking. Are you there? I think he's frozen. That's a nightmare. Just at the moment, we were going to get the big chat on Idah. So I'll ask you the same question then, Kev. I've been backing him. I've also been backing Arnie Engels, as you know. We'll get on to him. Does he start tomorrow? Because you made a very interesting point, and I already pitched this during the week, that Maeda's a better centre forward than he is a left winger for me. Yesterday, I found it very interesting after JP and I spoke that Brendan Rodgers was talking about James Forrest as a left winger or a right winger. So then I'm thinking, right, what if he starts on the left and Kuhn starts on the right? We Maida through the middle, Big Idah on the bench as an impact sub. So I've changed my mind 2 or 3 times this week. But after listening to him yesterday, Kev, I'm going to go for Maida through the middle. I'm going to go for Forrest on the left, Kuhn on the right. What do you think?
I think the team that started against St Mirren is a cup final team. And I think that's always the case. I don't think Rodgers had any decision to make in his head. I don't think Rodgers had any decision to make in his head. I think he would have had a decision to make if Jota was fit. And then that's when the decision comes in. I think the way he looks at it, I think he says, Maidah's my best left winger that I have got fit. So he plays him on the left wing. No matter if we didn't think, no matter if we we think his best position is through the middle. Rodgers gone, he's the best left winger I've got fit in my squad, so he plays, and Idah goes through the middle, and we've got the option to move and dies into the middle if the game's not gone our way, or if he wants to if he wants to mess it up a wee bit in the second half, mix it up a wee bit in the second half. With Adam Idah, before James comes back in and answers the question, I've got more comfortable with Adam Idah, where I've now just decided that he's never going to do anything outside the box. He's Irish Giacomakis, and he'll score. But if he doesn't score, he's not going to do none. I'm comfortable with that now. That's my level of expectations with Adam Idah now. I've got it out my head. He's no Dembele, he's no Odson Edouard. He should be in the 18 box all the time, putting the ball into the back of the net. That's it. That's where his strength lies for me. Is
that enough for Brendan? For his striker to be that type of player, do you think, Kev?
He backed him. He spent the money on him in the summer. He chased him all summer. He wanted him. So it probably is enough for Brendan, because Brendan will want to get proven right.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because obviously Giacomakis has been in the news this week, pitching himself for a job. James,
it's a non-story, Paul. If a journalist asked me, "Would you like to go and return to play for Celtic?" Of course, I would go, "Aye, I'll go back." It was a non-story. The journalist just pitched the question.
I'm surprised that he's agreed to that kind of style of question, to be honest, but. Fair play. They got their wee soundbite, didn't they? And they got their clicks, and they got people talking about it. But let's talk about the Irish Giacomakis instead, James, as Kev has just christened him. Adam Idah, loads of stick throughout the season. Does he start for you? Because I've changed my mind a couple of times this week.
Yeah, just before I could answer that, I think Adam's kind of the Adam Idah question is it's very complex, to be honest. As an Irishman, I'm probably going to be a bit biased, but I think a couple of things to be right at the same time. Like I said at the time, like he wasn't worth 9 million, and the fact we paid that was the club's fault for not wanting to do business quicker, and that's our own fault for paying that 9 million. At the same time, I think that price tag gets attached to Adam, and that brings a lot of that's for me kind of what brings a lot of the negativity online and from the Celtic support. And Adam Idah himself, if you look at the history of his career, he said it when he came here, if Adam Idah doesn't have confidence, he doesn't do it. He's a confidence player. He needs it to score. He needs it to play well. And he even said that in Norwich when he didn't feel loved by the manager, didn't feel loved by the fans, that he didn't play well, and he put in poor performances. And I think the one thing with Adam is he needs that support. And when he does have that confidence, he's really effective. Like you've seen this season, it's a weird one that he scored 20 goals because they've all kind of came in little clusters of games. So 3 or 4 games together, and I think that kind of really shows that when he gets one, he'll go on and score a couple more, and he might have one or two poor games, and the head drops again, the confidence goes, and he's back to kind of not scoring for a couple of games. I think it's the story of his career really, with inconsistencies and kind of struggling to put it all together. From a kind of Irish point of view, if you're looking from the outside looking in at Celtic, you're looking at Adam Idah scoring 20 goals, you're looking at him getting a breakout season, and you're really positive about it. But I think if you're watching him every week, you'll obviously have a different opinion. And I think my own opinion on his season so far, I think obviously he's scoring 20 goals. It's obviously he's had a pretty good season. He's had big moments in the Champions League. The 2 goals against Villa showcase that he can do at that level. The goal, I think, was the other one against Bratislava. He's obviously got big goals against Rangers, and I think he's shown that he can be a Celtic striker, but it's just about the other parts of his game that aren't up to scratch. As well as that, I think Celtic, we've been absolutely blessed with strikers over the last number of years. Our expectations are sky high, and as they should be for a club like Celtic. But like Kyogo, Musa, Edouard, we've been absolutely blessed with strikers over the last number of years, and I think Adam, in terms of his hold of play at times, his touches, his pass, and I think they're probably not at that level of those 3 guys. As Kev was saying, though, I think Adam's main strength is the Irish Giacomakis, is that when he's in the box, he can be lethal. And if we play to his strengths and we're not misprofiling him as this big target man that's going to hold up the ball brilliantly, because he's not, even though he's 6'3", he's quite poor in the air. I've watched him for years for Ireland. When Ireland go long, he doesn't win any headers. He's quite ineffective. He's not a target man, even though he's 6'3", which is a funny thing to say. I think he's a poacher in the box, and if we kind of played to his strengths in terms of kind of trying to limit the amount of time that he has on the ball with his back to goal, we're kind of trying to play him through behind the defence. We're cutting balls back to him, cross into the box, then he's going to be really effective. But it's just about us, Rodgers hopefully not continually misprofiling him and hoping that he can be this big target man, because he's not. He's more of a poacher and a kind of a goal scorer. And I don't think if we continue to do that, I think we're continuing to get these poor performances, because I think when he's kind of facing the goal and he's running with it, he can his decision making can be good, and he can do the right thing in terms of passing and stuff, but it's just about getting him in that position all the time rather than with his back to goal, and it's kind of where he really struggles. Whether he starts at the weekend, I think as Kev said, I think Rodgers will go with the team that started against St Mirren, because I think that was kind of his kind of little run out for them, all getting them all playing together, all cohesive, kind of the week before the cup final. But long term will be interesting, because obviously Idah there as well. I think Idah is much more effective up front than he is on the wing, and it'll just be interesting this summer to see what approach we take with regards to, do we bring in another winger, do we bring in another striker? Obviously there's links with Dyson away, so if he goes, what do you do then? Do you trust in Adam, or do you bring another striker? So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but to kind of answer the question on Adam Idah's season, I think it's obviously a breakout season for him. 20 goals, when you look at that, it's really good and it's really positive, but I think there's the wider parts of his game need to improve, and we've seen with Rodgers before, he can improve attacking players, and hopefully he can do it with Adam in terms of kind of his weaknesses.
Yeah, you're right, and he's a great developer player. Sorry, Kev, I was just going to jump in there and say James did tell us from the offset that Idah wasn't great in the air, because you just see 6'3" centre forward equals target man, and James was very quick to say actually he's not that type of player, and I think that's been proven as well, Kev.
Alan Morrison might come in to prove me wrong here. But I'm sure Alan Morrison says the last game that we played against Rangers, Adam Idah did not win a ball in there. He did not win an aerial duel.
Right. He needs to be better than that. He needs to be better than that, Kev.
He does, but I just found that quite startling for a guy at 6'3". He did not win an aerial duel with any of the Rangers centre halves.
The big thing as well, Kev, talking to developing Adam Idah or anyone else, you just look at the development of even Dyson Maida at his age. I always say this, players can develop. You don't have to be in your early 20s for a manager like Rodgers to develop you. And Dyson Maida has developed incredibly this season. You think Matt O'Reilly last season, and Liam Scales is the other big one for me that under Brendan Rodgers has developed incredibly well at Celtic. So yes, I still hold hope that there's going to be improvement with Idah.
Overall, for me, if Idah starts tomorrow, I'm not worried. I'm not worried, because the big fella can score. And overall, for me, the fact that he's came in and scored 20 goals, I'm happy with a Celtic striker coming in and scored 20 goals. Folk put the price tag on his head, as James rightly says. That's not his fault. And I've got this kind of strange thing where this money doesn't actually exist anyway. It's not like Michael Nicholson didn't go down to Norwich with a Aldi bag for life with £9 million in used banknotes and gave it to them.
Would it fit? Would it fit in an Aldi bag?
I mean, get the bigger ones, eh?
You need a van.
The £3 ones, eh? So it's an electronic transaction, and I think we put an awful lot of value on electronic transactions of football players. But as James says, the price tag's no his problem. Same as it's no Arne Engels' problem. That's the club's problem.
No, you're right.
But Idah's came in and scored 20 goals and go, that's great for a Celtic striker.
Well, it is. And we look at the price tag, Kevin, and we say, £9 million, that's what we paid for Edouard. But we paid that years ago. So you're right, it's a floating figure. And I think we, Adam Idah as well, it's interesting that we've spoken about a hell of a lot the fact that Brendan doesn't want one guy to score all the goals, and when he came in first time round, the guy that was scoring all the goals was Lee Griffiths. On the back of a 40-goal season, he didn't score anything like that again for the rest of his career, and he likes to spread it out. We've got 3 guys with 20-plus goals in the squad.
This is probably a conversation for the summer, but I really like the fact that James used the word misprofile, because I think Idah and Engels have both been misprofiled when they've came to us. I do think that, and I think that needs to improve in the summer.
With us identifying players.
When us identifying players.
Yeah. No, you're right. And by the way, we'll get on to Engels, because obviously there's been another story about Arnie Engels this week, and he was asked about it just yesterday in the lead up to the cup final, which isn't ideal for a 21-year-old to be unsettled. It does happen. Matt O'Reilly spoke after the event about all the interest in him during the season, unsettling him in his last campaign for Celtic, his last full campaign anyway. David Boyle says, on a day trip for the final tomorrow and cannot wait. Is it possible to walk up without a ticket after the match? Too bad. After the match, we'll be absolutely fine, David. It's just for that period, the 90 minutes, that it's all the seats are booked. But certainly afterwards, get in, have a drink, and there'll be live music and hopefully celebrations as well, David. And I say hopefully because there's a lot of people in the comment section reckoning we're going to win at a canter tomorrow. The slabber and cabbage comes in. It'll be a rout 5-0 at least for the champs. I'm being a little bit more cautious. I was asked this question this morning on a radio show, and I said my prediction for tomorrow is going to be much tighter than that. It's going to be 2-1. Here's my thinking. Sorry, Kev.
Was it the BBC this morning?
Maybe. Did you hear me?
No,
I go under a pseudonym now.
You got under a pseudonym now.
Yeah.
Was it Phil that you were on with, Mr. Goodlad?
No, it wasn't actually. It was Jane McGuire.
Jane. All right. No.
Yeah.
Phil's very cheeky, I find.
I have spoken to Phil. Nah, Phil's
towards everything Celtic.
Phil's a good. No, by the way, I'd say something. He might come across wrong there, by the way, because I have spoken to him quite a few times off camera or off tape.
That's a bit of a hint there, Paul. That's a bit of a hint.
It is a hint. Now, I know that we've beaten them 5-1, 5-1, 6-0 this season, but there has also been two very tight games, two each game, the 1-0 game, during a period where Aberdeen were on better form. I get it. But as a cup final, I'm just looking through the Scottish Cup finals here. And very rarely do you win at a canter. I mean, Celtic in Angie's last season came up against Inverness Carly Thistle, who were in the division below, and we won 3-1. It wasn't like, 3, 4, 5 clear goals. And that doesn't happen very often. So if you're looking at anything above a 2-goal margin in terms of scoring more than 2 goals against your opposition, you're going back to 2012-13 when Celtic beat Hibs 3-0. The season before that, Hearts beat Hibs 5-1. Season before that, Celtic beat Motherwell 3-0 in the teeming rain, as you'll remember. But since then, it's been the likes of 2-0, 2-1, 3-2. Very tight games, James, because it's a final, because it's a completely different occasion. And obviously, Aberdeen, and I'm not comparing Jimmy Tillene to Ange or Aberdeen to Spurs, Aberdeen have one game to try and right all the wrongs of this season. So that, I think, can work for a team in terms of a motivation as well.
Yeah, I think the nature of it is a final is obviously going to kind of level the playing field a small bit. Like, I think there's obviously going to be, regardless of how much you've won, there's going to be nerves on Celtic side. There's obviously going to be nerves on Aberdeen side. As we've seen this season, it's kind of the year of the underdog winning, kind of breaking their cup streak. So hopefully I'm not tempting anyone there saying that, but I think like Jimmy Tillene has shown that he is a good manager. He can get the game plan right against Celtic. But I think it's at the same time, you're looking at their form. I think they've lost the last 4 games in a row. Not ideal preparation into a cup final. In terms of like their danger men, like I think the likes of Keskinen can cause you trouble with his speed and stuff. But like other than that, I'm not really having any fear going into the game. As I was saying, like the nature it is a cup final, it will level the playing field a small bit. But I feel if Celtic can turn up on the day and not be complacent and showcase their quality, I think we'll win. Though I think it'll be one of the canter, probably not. But I think that the game last week against St Mirren, I'm kind of actually happy we didn't win, because I think it's almost a wake up call for the players and hoping that they won't be complacent kind of this weekend. I think we've seen other examples of not just Celtic, but teams finishing the season with a cup final and they're almost walking into it. They might throw to a win the week before the cup final and then head in a bit complacent. I think that'll be the opposite with the Celtic team this weekend after last week. And I think it obviously is a one-off game. There's always that fear that we will lose, but I think with Aberdeen's form and kind of our own confidence in Celtic's quality. I think like if we turn up on the day and really are mentally focused and stuff, I think it'll be absolutely fine. But it's just always that fear with the one-off cup final, and I think as we've seen this season, it's the year the underdog in cup finals. We've seen with Newcastle, Tottenham. I can name loads, like Crystal Palace as well. So yeah, hopefully I'm not tempting fate saying that.
Well, the big thing with that, you're talking about the making sure there's no complacency. That ties into the winning mentality. That's part of the winning mentality, isn't it? Where you basically reset before every game, and you play that like it is the only 90 minutes that matters. And Celtic, I think, have got it. They've absolutely got that. What you're looking at for me is an occasion where Aberdeen are at the absolute top of their game. And a few things go against Celtic, be that poor performances or officiating. But even without that, I do think it's going to be tight. Kev, you and I are a wee bit older than young James here. We'll remember, I believe it was the last time Aberdeen won the Scottish Cup, way back in 1990. Mm-hmm. And people remember that for things like poor Anton. I remember that month's edition of Not The View, leading into the cup final, had a picture of Anton Rogan, then he missed the decisive penalty. But I'm going to ask you the question: who missed Celtic's first penalty in that shootout? Can you remember?
Wow.
We missed two. We missed two penalties. It had gone into sudden death by the time poor Anton missed. And big Brian Irvine scored what became the winner in a 9-8 penalty shootout. I think that was a record at the time in terms of the goal scoring. But our very first penalty was missed.
Wasn't it Dovcek?
Yes, it was. It was Darius Dovcek who missed the first penalty.
I completely fell at Jakunovski that day because he didn't want to take a penalty, and they had to basically drag him to take a penalty kick that day, because I was there that day and I remember it, and he was refusing, and I can't remember the players had to push him forward to actually walk and take that penalty kick.
Wow.
I remember that. So I've got more guts for Anton, because Anton strolled up. He said, this is what I need to do.
I felt sorry for. I can still see his face in my mind's eye. I felt sorry for big Anton. No, you're right. Jackie took the one before him, but that was only after Paul Elliott and Derek White had taken a couple. So back then you would have expected your centre forward to take one. And I also remember, let me check this one, Charlie Nicholas scored. I remember that as well. Charlie Nicholas scored in that shootout. But yeah, that was the last time, 1990. So they'll be hoping that all the planets align and everything goes their way as well. Some more comments coming in. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Paul McLean, you're in and you're on the YouTube. When was the last 4-5-0 result? This is the point I'm making, Paul. It just doesn't happen. A close one tomorrow. I totally get it. Listen, I would love us to win 4-5-0. It would be brilliant. And we've done it this season. We beat Aberdeen 6-0. But I keep going back to these routes as well. It took us between 25 or 30 minutes to score the first goal when we beat them 6-0, 5-1 and 5-1. So the first half hour is going to be absolutely vital. And, you know, Celtic just have to be patient, I think, and because we do have the qualities there. We've also got Danny Boy. You're on the YouTube. Aberdeen have shown nothing to indicate a close game tomorrow. You're sticking with the 4 or 5. There's plenty of you. And Magnet 67 afternoon Acsom winners. I hate being such huge favourites, but I'm convinced we will destroy Aberdeen. I'm going for a stinking 6-0. I'm bringing everybody right back down to 2-1. I'm going to say it's going to be a tight one. By the way, I'd love Johnny Kennedy to come on and score the winner in the dying embers of the game. Is this the end? We've already spoken about Greg Taylor. Is it the end for Jeffrey Sloop, Rio Hatate, Nicholas Kuhn, or even Dyson Maeda? I'm going to throw this one over, or even Arnie Engels. Throw this one over to you first, James. Are you worried about the loss of any of these guys? Do you think a lot of that is just speculation?
I think Sloop, I think the Sloop move was just a short-term move. I think he won't be signing on this summer. I don't think he's probably shown his performances, and I think wage-wise doesn't make sense either. I think he'd be looking for upwards of 30k a week, which we obviously wouldn't make sense for us to offer that with Tierney there. Rio Tate and Maeda, I think there will be the fear that the pair of them might leave, considering if you look at kind of how many years they've given to the club, or they kind of at that 3rd, 4th year. They've achieved everything. They've had the breakout Champions League year, which is obviously brilliant for Celtic, but it's also not brilliant for Celtic because it brings unwanted eyes. So I think the pair of them, I definitely will have interest in the summer. I think it's Udinese that are looking at Tate, and I think there's teams in England looking at Dyson. So it's definitely. I know we kind of seem to say this every summer, but it's definitely going to be an interesting summer. With kind of will it turn into a rebuild almost if we lose the likes of Tate, Maida, even kind of Alistair Johnson, Carter Vickers. If you look at those guys, I'm not wanting them away now, but I'm just saying, like, if you look at the years they've given, and I think they're on third, fourth year, they've won everything at the club. Again, they've had the breakthrough in Europe. The worry would be these guys will kind of be looking at a move away, and I don't think we can kind of sell all four and replace them adequately, because I just wouldn't have the trust in our recruitment. If we sell one of Rio Tate or Maida, okay, you kind of hope that we can bring in replacements. Lennon Miller hopefully is going to come in the summer, but I don't think we can be in a situation where we lose all four, because it's just very, very dangerous going into next season. The Engels story, I think, is I kind of wouldn't read too much into that. I think regardless of how much money they'd be willing to give us, I think even for him it doesn't make sense to leave Celtic after one season. I think if he does want to move, or eventually want to move on, it'll be 2-3 years down the line. I don't think it makes sense for him to go just one season in at Celtic. So I wouldn't be reading too much into that.
It doesn't make sense, you're right. For him, it seems too premature. And I remember having a kind of similar thought process when Jota was offered the big money in Saudi, and it was 25, and people say, well, Celtic can't turn down 25. I think we would probably go for it, Kev, if it was increased to 25. The figure I've seen is 20, of course. And Engels was talked to yesterday as part of the pre-match press coverage, and he was asked the question, which is nice of them, obviously on the eve of a Scottish Cup final. 21-year-old sitting there talking about his future, and he's been very composed since he came to Celtic, Kev. Like he doesn't suffer fools, I don't think. He's always very balanced with his output, and he basically just said he's concentrating on Celtic. That's his priority, and that's the answer that we want to hear. But I've got absolutely no doubt if Celtic were offered 25, they would sell him.
I've offered no doubt as well. I've got no doubt that would actually happen.
Does that mean he's worth 11 million then? If he's worth for 25,
he's worth whatever that fictitious electronic transfer onto another spreadsheet is.
You need to put a visor on before you send the money, though. Do you need to do that?
You've got to and like have like 2 thumbs to actually get in. Then you have to have a big long password.
Yeah, and a bookie's pen behind your lug.
Then you've got to send it. Of course, Celtic would sell him if they get 25 million. I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the summer, mainly because who'll stay will stay and who leaves will leave. And there's no a lot we can actually do about it. I think
we could try it, Kev.
We could chuck sharks at team buses and stuff like that. We could do that.
I'm not suggesting that for real, just in case I get banned from the press conferences after that.
No. There's probably some players that have reached the end of the cycle, and the club know what's going to happen during the summer with them.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Sloop knows where he's going next year. He knows it's not at Celtic Park. He probably knew that a couple of months ago, that he wasn't going to. That Celtic was just going to be a nice wee notch on his CV.
How many players have won an FA Cup and a Scottish Cup winners medal?
See, I think that's a load of rubbish. He didn't play in the FA Cup final. You should only get a cup final medal if you actually are in the cup final squad. What
have you played in every? What about Bertie Auld? Bertie Auld played every game in 1957. He missed the 7-1 final. Does he not deserve a medal?
No, he didn't play in the final. It's like James Maddison. It's like James Maddison the other night. They're turning up full kit and getting a medal.
That was like me on Monday. After 90 seconds of action.
I was going to bring that up as well.
Did you watch it? Did you?
Yes. But you were on the pitch for 90 seconds.
Yeah, it was.
That's different. I think that the club might brace themselves for a Dyson bid, because Dyson himself might never expected to have a season like this, and he might get an offer on the table at the summer that he might never expected to actually happen.
Did you hear what he said at the Football Writers Awards? Did you hear what he said? No. I don't know why or if this has been reported, but he was asked if he would change anything at Celtic, and he goes, "Yeah, I just wish people would stop asking me for photos." I was like, Dyson, come on! He always looks so happy in Costco when
he's a bit like Roy Keane.
Yeah, aye, doesn't he like the selfie? That's what it is. Doesn't like the selfie.
Well, that's for anybody. When he's out doing his shot him in Costco for nappies and all of that, just didn't go up and disturb him. Just didn't go up and disturb him. The man's just there buying like ginger nuts and some digestives and nappies and that. Just leave him alone. Like,
ginger nuts are good for heartburn. I could see him going for a ginger nut. But I would never ask, seriously, like in that kind of setting, Kev, if they're in a signing or if they're at a Celtic event, I get it.
Different.
But if they're going about their business, I would just leave them.
Looking in the window of a bar, he'd travel to flights to London or something like that, then didn't ask him for a selfie. No, but in regards to that, it will be some guys' last game for Celtic tomorrow. The club will be well aware of some guys who will probably indicated that they want to go, and some guys and the club will probably indicate to some players that they're not going to be too difficult to deal with in the summer. I think the interesting part is this. If Rodgers is going to stay bar next season, it's a rebuild. If he's not going to stay bar next season, it's still continue winning now, and that will be the type of player that they'll bring in. But you might see a difference in the type of player if Rodgers signs a contract extension. Then it will be a rebuild, and I think he's already sort of indicated that about a couple of players that have been on what he called it the hamster wheel for 3 or 4 years now, that they maybe need moved on for their own good, and the club needs refreshed. So if Rodgers is staying bar year 3, it's a rebuild. If his third year is going to be his last year, then it'll be a one now, and you'll probably see more players coming back and from the Rodgers contact book.
Are you playing Jenga, Kev? Is somebody off camera playing you at Jenga? It sounds like you are trying to place a little.
Oh, sorry, I'm actually fiddling with post-it notes. Sorry,
I'm joking, mate. Right, I reckon when it comes to players departing, we'll probably lose 2, and I'm basing it on the following: 21-22, we'll lose Idah and Edouard. The following season, it was Juranovic and the Greek Idah. It was Giacomakis. The following season, it was Jota and Abada, and the season after that, this season, it was Matt O'Reilly and Kyogo. And during that period, we've also lost guys like Christie and Starfelt. It's not unlike us to lose 3, but I'm thinking 2.
21-22, we lost Idah and Eddie. 25-26, we welcome back Idah and Eddie.
I would, with open arms. With open arms, I would welcome them back. I know that a lot of people thought, down in tools, etc., but circumstances have changed. Edouard has something to prove. Rodgers is the guy that's been his manager at the peak of his football career. It's a match made in heaven.
Folk laugh at it, but for what we actually know, that the number of players that the scouting team have presented to Rodgers and he just went, no good enough, can happen again in the summer.
Yeah, but the thing
then he ends up going back to his contact book.
Right, is Idah better than one or two of the centre halves we've got at the football club right now, Kev?
Yes.
Would Edouard get a game for Celtic right now?
He would be on the bench, depending how he hasn't played for ages, So
I guess I'm thinking of peak Edouard when I say that, because he's not over the hill yet, is he?
He's not over the hill yet, but I don't think we would be getting peak Edouard back. There would be a bedding in period for him.
Yep. I would take the pair of them. There you go. John Mullane, or Milan, please tell me how you pronounce that. Heading to Dublin Airport now. Let's go, boys. Safe travels. And a big shout out to everybody coming over from Ireland. It's incredible the commitment that you show every single week to come and watch Celtic, sometimes twice a week. Monty, always a pleasure to see you. Afternoon to you as well. I think you were enjoying the Celtic Cross Collective, Kev. That's all 5 tracks from your EP now on the channel. YouTube, go and check them out. I love this, right? So, Kevin and I, we started up a Celtic podcast at the kitchen table 8 years ago, and since then you have done a wee bit of that. You've kind of like done a few wee diversions, Kev. So the first one was a book of poetry on Henrik Larsson, the best book of poetry ever written about Henrik Larsson ever in the history of literature, and it's available on Acsom.net. And then you follow that up not just with another book. You decide, right, I'm going to follow that up with an EP. A tribute to Henrik Larsson. I think that's brilliant. And eventually, once we get a physical copy of that. We can maybe do a some kind of package on the merchandise store as well, where you can buy the two of them. Fair play to you, Kev. Book of poetry, an EP on Henrik Larsson, and they're going down well. People said, I hope it's not, what was it? I hope it's not folk, country or rap. And I said it's all three.
Aye, unfortunately, we tick every one of the boxes there. Aye, and I can also say it's the best EP ever written about Henrik Larsson. I can say that.
Yeah, you can.
Ever written and ever recorded about Henrik Larsson. I can say that quite openly, and it's a fact.
And we will do a promotional video. We will,
even though Dictator might argue with me that they've got a song about Henrik Larsson.
This was a single. This was a single, mate. This is an EP.
I'll argue that Rastafinian's better, but there you go.
Yeah, you might share a stage sometime. Chill Pill, here we go. Like Kenny, he's going to be a player. I hope he is. Maybe his development next season is elsewhere, but I hope that he does have a future at Celtic. And at Celtic Follower, afternoon comrades, we need to be composed, alert and ruthless tomorrow and show the standards that the manager has set. I just get this impression about Brendan Mark II. He was always composed, James. Always. That was the one thing. He was always tuned in. He had that laser focus. But there was a period of time during that first tenure where he changed, and it was quite clear that he was checking out, and we all know now why. But what we've got now is that ultra-focused Brendan that we got on day one first time round and on day one second time round. He's maintaining that, isn't he? And that's why I don't think we will be complacent. We will be composed. We will go into the game tomorrow and treat it with the respect that it deserves. Treat the opponents with the respect that they deserve as well. It is a different version to Brendan that we've got, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's considering how much Brendan's won. He's coming back to Celtic. You would question his motivations when he originally came. I think a lot of Celtic fans did question his motivations, myself included. Does he still have that kind of drive to kind of win more at Celtic? And I think you've definitely seen that. I think part of it was obviously I think the way he left definitely hurt him as a Celtic fan. Obviously hurt a lot of Celtic fans. And I think he wanted to rebuild that relationship and again win as much as he can at Celtic and really cement himself as a modern day icon of the club. I think looking back at how he did leave at the time, you're kind of clouded by you're kind of a bit heartbroken, so you can't really take in the reasons why he did leave. But obviously, it was kind of a mixture of the club not backing him, etc., etc. He wanted to test himself in England, and like as I said, these things can football's a very fast-moving game, and like hopefully in the summer, recruitment-wise, he's backed. And if the likes of Tate might any of them leave, they're replaced adequately. Because as I said, football's a fast-moving game, and Brendan will have high ambitions and high aspirations for Celtic, as all Celtic fans do. And if it comes a situation in summer where he's not backed or he's unhappy with what he's been given, you could very well see, as you just said there, a kind of a clocked out Brendan Rodgers, which we hope to never see again. But again, football's a fast moving game, and these things can materialise if he isn't back in the summer. So yeah, like at the minute, obviously he's laser focused and determined to keep winning at Celtic, which is brilliant. And I think obviously that carries into tomorrow and how he's going to set the team up, how he's prepared the team set up all week. He's done it so many times, like he'll know exactly what needs to be done in terms of the build up, etc. All of that. And I think we're all very confident. The team itself obviously has that winning mentality. And I think especially, as I said, after last week with the 1-1 draw against St Mirren, I think there'll be no complacency whatsoever, because I'm not saying there will be complacency, but it's only natural after beating side 5-0, what was it, against them 2 weeks ago. You're going into a cup final against them. It's only natural for players to be a small bit complacent, considering you've just beat them 5-0. But I think there'll be none of that tomorrow after last week. And obviously Brendan Rodgers himself, he's so accustomed to and so successful in how he prepares teams for cup finals, because regardless of the nature of Scottish football with Celtic and stuff, it's winning a cup final. Cup finals are a straight knockout. It's a lot of things can kind of stop you from winning it. It doesn't matter what the quality gap is. As you said, refereeing decisions, a bit of luck on the day, and his track record is exceptional. So I think we can go in tomorrow with all the confidence that he's prepared the team right, and that he'll be leading us to another treble, hopefully.
Oh, I hope so. I absolutely do. I'm just looking at the team last year. when we beat Rangers 1-0, Kev. It's not changed a great deal, actually. Joe Hart in goals, Alistair Johnston at right back, Greg Taylor at left back, the two centre-halves, Carter Vickers and Scales, the midfield, Matt O'Reilly, Callum McGregor, Rio Atati, and then the front three were James Forrest, Kyogo and Maeda. Not a massive overhaul. The three subs that came on, Adam Idah, Nicholas Kuhn and Paulo Bernardo could well start. But the reason I read that out, it's obviously... it's interesting that a player like Liam Scales now, you look at these cup finals, you look at the successes that we're enjoying, and he's absolutely pivotal to that, Liam Scales, and he's a player who has been written off time and time and time again. You just need to go back to this previous season where we beat Inverness Caley Thistle, and he's nowhere because he's at Aberdeen at that point, probably looking to leave Celtic. He starts tomorrow, no one blinks an eyelid about that because it's Liam Scales and we know what we're getting from him. It's been an incredible turnaround. And I would say the top three in terms of players developed under Brendan Rodgers second time round.
No one will blink an eyelid if he does start, and I think he actually will start. But as you say, there's a sliding doors moment. There's a bit of the Johnny Kenny moment where it's luck that he's still there. There's an injury, and next thing you know, Liam Scales, by the way, we're going to need you, and he comes in. And I think last season he never let Rodgers down, and I think Rodgers got a lot of trust in him that you will not let me down, i.e. like effort-wise, and also that he's always available. He's hardly ever injured as Liam Scales, and that's a big thing that, especially since Rodgers came back, we've had centre-halves out for periods of time, and Scales always seems to be available for him, and you can get 90 minutes out of Liam Scales. You have a look at the League Cup final this season. I think Scales changed the game when he came on. We managed to get a foothold in that game because, again, I'm going to go back to Alan Morrison. Alan Morrison will tell you that Liam Scales is the best passer in the football that we've got out of the centre-halves, and he can actually break the lines. Sometimes he doesn't do it quick enough for me, but I understand why he's there. Trustees had that wee kind of tail off to the end of the season. I think domestic reasons there's maybe for that as well. Quite a few things going on in his life. You should dare him in close season if John Hughes is a bit. Scales is done really, really well, but we know the limitations with Scales. But we know that we'll get 100%, and we know that he won't hide. But should he be the first choice centre half? That's a big, massive question. But he will play tomorrow. Him and Cameron Carter Vickers seem to have a decent enough relationship. Aberdeen have got a wee bit of pace up front that troubled us in the 4-each game last year, in the 4-each semi-final, which nobody seems to mention anymore, last year. See the new way. It's Aberdeen have just got as much chance of winning this game as us. Now, when the teams walk out that tunnel, it's still 50-50 because it is a one-off cup tie. And it's up to Rodgers and the coaching staff to make sure that the players know that themselves. It was interesting to hear Paulo Bernardo actually saying when he was getting asked about last season's cup final, he says that was last season. Right away, that was his answer.
That's the mentality, Kev.
He says that means nothing. That was last season. This is completely different. I also found that interesting as well that Rodgers kind of threw it out there that he says, "Oh well, I don't know what Aberdeen will do. Will they play a mid block or will they go to a low block?" And I went, "That's quite interesting, Brendan, because Aberdeen haven't changed their style all season. So is he putting it out there that he reckons that they might just park the bus, hope to actually sneak a goal and no be as open as what they have been against us this season?"
Wouldn't surprise me, Kev. That would not surprise me. I think it's going to be a very clunky game.
Are they going to try to break up the game? They're actually going to try to do a Spurs. I am talking my principles out the window here. I'm just going to make sure I'm giving us the best opportunity to win the game. When you're saying about cup finals, it's the last game of the season and it's nervous. It's a cup final, it's nervous. That's how I reckon you didn't get big score lines in them. Even though some of the score lines, especially the one against Motherwell, was far comfortable than the scoreline actually suggests in Rodgers' second season, and the 3-1 against Inverness was far comfortable.
You're talking about the compare game, Kev?
Yes,
You can't talk about that game without mentioning Marvin.
So I think there's a bit of fatigue comes in, and I also think as well the team that's the underdog in the final, when they lose a goal and maybe lose another one quite quickly, they don't fold the same as if it's a league game because it is a cup final, and they're going, we're not going to get hammered in this cup final.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's see some teams collapse, like St Johnstone collapsed in the semi-final, but that doesn't seem to happen in a final because it is a final. And these guys go, I might never get to a final again, and I'm no walking out here with a 4-5-0 defeat, and that's where it happens. So I'm like you, I'm not as confident as what a lot of folk is because it is a 50-50 one-off game. But if we turn up, we should win. We are the better side, but sometimes that means nothing. We were the better side against Kilmarnock under Neil Lennon. We were the better side against St Mirren when we got beaten in the semi-final under Lennon. It can happen, as we've seen in this week, but Rodgers' team talks might have been written because Crystal Palace, Spurs, Newcastle, you can go like that to the guys, all their favourites lost.
Yep.
We need to be on this. So.
No, you're right. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to go for 2-1. I think a lot of that will go the way that you've suggested, Kev, and it'll make for a tighter game. But I think we've got enough. Just looking at last season, you took me by surprise. It was 3 each, Kev, the semi against.
Was it Apple? I've added in another goal there.
That's all right, mate. It's 3 each. That was a game where Joe Hart missed the penalty, wasn't it? In the penalty shootout. He had a wee moment to himself, thought he was going to be the hero, and then he missed it. But, we're no better. We've got Schmeichel after that as well, and he's been tremendous, and he'll start tomorrow as well, I'm sure. Quick prediction, guys. I've told you, I think it's going to be 2-1. I'm going to start with you, James French. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think after Aberdeen getting bet 5-0, I think Tillon will be a lot more conservative going into tomorrow, like especially with how easy kind of they've been to play through in the last number of meetings between ourselves and Aberdeen. I wouldn't be surprised if he does play that low block and just kind of trying to frustrate us. And I think if he does do that, I think it'll be probably 2-1, probably copy your goal scoreline. And I think Idah winner, hopefully Idah or Kenny winner. That's what I'm hoping for. Either one will do.
I'd love to see Johnny Kenny scoring a winner. I'd love it.
Maybe the pair of them.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Or mind you, Engels as well has been taking a lot of stick this season. But yeah, I'd love to see Johnny Kenny doing that. Kev, are you a wee bit more confident in terms of the scoreline?
No, I didn't do scorelines, but I know for whatever happens, I'm going to have a good day. That's my prediction.
Just you remember the sunscreen, young man. Listen, thank you every single one of you for getting involved. If you're coming along tomorrow, I look forward to seeing you. You will be able to buy tickets for the Alan Stubbs and Tosh McKinley gig next Saturday. The ticket link, if you're not coming tomorrow, is underneath this video. Have a great Friday night. Join us half an hour before kick-off tomorrow, or if you're going to bed, I'll see you there. Thanks for joining a Celtic State of Mind.